Broadcasting across the nation, on your radio, and on Current TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
The war on labor unions continues. It started in Wisconsin, moved on to Ohio, now in Michigan. And we got to fight back, and we will. Good morning, everybody. What do you say? Great to see you today. Welcome to the Full Court Press here on Current TV and on your local progressive talk radio station. Coming to you live from our nation's capital and booming out all the way across this great land of ours, coast to coast. Enjoy talking about the issues with you and invite you to weigh in anytime that you can. Any way you can. You can give us a call the old-fashioned way. We'll hopefully get your voice on national television and national radio. Give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. If you want to be like the Pope, Benedict XVI, you can tweet us. You can go on Twitter. We've been hearing from him all morning. But, man, once he got started, he just won't shut up, you know. It's just like, there he is anyhow. The Pope can tweet, so can you, at BP Show. And you can join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Bill Press Show. And we have one of the best, the most prolific Facebook and Twitter practitioners in the country today.
I believe they call them Twitter practitioners.
With Eric Burns, head of bullfight strategy. Well, co-head of bullfight strategies. Hello, Eric. Good to have you back.
Than's for having me, Bill. It's
Eric,
great to be here.
Friend of Bill for the whole hour.
All right. Look, to be your friend for an entire hour is an honor to me.
I don't have many friends that last that long.
I know.
Yeah, right.
So, have you heard from the Pope yet?
I got a message. It was in Latin, though. I don't really speak Latin. So, I don't know. I have to have it translated.
Well, the way I read about today, the way it works, there is a someone sitting with the pontiff, right? So he says, "This is what I want to say," and then that other person types it in, and then they have like some official cardinals standing in back of him. So, because he was going to take a couple of questions. And in case there's any doctrinal or theological issue that raises up, the cardinals have to huddle before the Pope can respond to make sure that he's not committing some heresy.
This sounds like how...
Oh, yeah, it's okay to eat fish on Fridays. I mean, to eat meat on Fridays. No, it's not!
Well, this sounds like how a lot of members of Congress, I imagine, tweet. They've got somebody doing it for them, someone standing behind them to make sure that they don't say anything wrong. I don't know.
By the way, the Pope has sent out a couple more tweets since we read his other one last hour. No, these are serious, by the way. You're looking at me like I'm going to make these up. He said, one of them says, "How can we celebrate the year of faith better in our daily lives?" He just throws that out there. And then he says, "By speaking with Jesus in prayer." All right, you lost me there. No, by speaking with Jesus in prayer, listening to what he tells you in the gospel, and looking for him in those in need. So he asks a question and then answers his own question on Twitter.
This is racy stuff.
It's like a pop quiz or like some sort of a news quiz.
Well, I don't think he's going to have as many followers as like Lindsay Lohan.
He currently has 714,000 followers.
Oh, I imagine that's going to grow dramatically.
Now that he's tweeting?
I wouldn't be surprised if he quickly becomes the most popular person on Twitter.
Well, all the Catholic schools, they'll force everybody to sign up.
Exactly.
Oh, he just tweeted again. It just says Coney 2012. I don't know what that is, but that's a whole new thing.
Lindsay Lohan does, in fact, have more Twitter followers than the Pope.
Oh, she does.
She has 4.6 million followers.
Is that right? 4.6 million.
Just wait, Dan. Just wait.
Yeah, that's right. Pope's just getting started.
Wait until the Pope starts having money problems and drinking and drug problems. He'll get 4.5.
But then the Pope didn't get $100,000 from Charlie Sheen like Lindsay Lohan did.
What if the Pope posed for Playboy like Lindsay Lohan did? Maybe he'll get more followers.
I don't
want to see that.
I don't think anyone wants to see that.
Speaking
you
of,
may be struck by lightning, I think, Peter, during this segment.
So Eric Burns here as a friend of Bill. President Jim Hoffa from the Teamsters will be joining us a little bit later in this hour. He's on the ground in Michigan, the war zone right now. And then Kitty Kelly, who is a great historian, biographer. She is going to be along in studio with us to talk about a new book she's got out, a really great book, Photographs of John F. Kennedy by a friend of hers, Stanley Tetrick. We'll get into all of that, but first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Well, good morning. Other headlines making news on this Wednesday. Game Change Part 2. You remember the book about the 2008 presidential campaign by Mark Halperin and John Heilemann, which was then turned into a movie. The authors are back at it. New York Times reporting they've inked a deal to write Double Down, Game Change 2012, about this year's election. It'll come out on bookshelves next year, and HBO has already signed the movie rights.
Really?
for it.
Already, huh?
Right.
Yes.
No kidding.
Milk it, baby, milk
But
it.
they're only going to take like 2 chapters of the book and turn it into a movie. That's what they did the last time.
Yeah.
Are they going to call it? They're really calling it Game Change 2?
It's Double Down, Game Change 2012.
Double down. Game change harder.
That was a phrase heard often during the campaign.
I think that was like the 7th Die Hard movie was called Double Down.
They should have called it Gaff or something like that. No, that's the biggest word that came out of
They
it.
should have called it 47%.
Oh, there you go.
And the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announced its inductees for the class of 2013 yesterday. 6 have been chosen from a group of 15. Disco star Donna Summer, blues guitarist Albert King, hip-hop group Public Enemy, rock band Hearts, rock band Rush, and singer Randy Newman. The induction ceremony will take place in
You a
April.
big Rush fan?
Look, I'm a huge Rush fan. Been a huge Rush fan since high school. Seen them live so many times. It's a travesty that they have not been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame until
agree.
now.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're being put in with Donna Summers, I mean, come on, give me a break. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously. that's
Every
ridiculous.
class is tainted now.
ridiculous.
Every
It is.
year they have a couple of jokes that go in
Yeah,
there.
but like my hats off to Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, Neil Peart, the greatest
Peart,
musicians in the world.
The greatest drummer
Good
alive
Lord.
today,
Wow.
Neil Peart.
I'm a little fanatical about Rush, I have to say. I'm proud to be
About
so.
you,
All right,
We were dumping earlier on Public Enemy,
dump away.
great band,
Dump
but
away.
not a rock and roll band.
That's true.
I love Public Enemy.
Yeah, they're good, but not Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And Santa Claus is definitely a Democrat, according to voters in a new poll.
We know that.
Public policy
Gives things
polling.
away.
Yeah, right.
Public policy polling asking 500 people what they thought Santa's political affiliation was. 44% say he's a Democrat. 28% say he's likely a Republican. They didn't ask what party Scrooge belongs to.
So what?
Who says that he's a Republican? Who's that
No,
president?
there are Republican Santas that go into the middle class family stockings and take stuff out and then leave through the chimney.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
And put it in the stockings of the 2%.
Right. Exactly.
That's called transfer of wealth.
Yeah.
Up.
I think he's actually
Right.
a super delegate to the Democratic Committee. I don't know.
Okay, so we got a lot of important stuff to talk about here with Fiscal Cliff and filibuster and what's happening in Michigan. But Eric Burns has been spending all of his time lately celebrating over the passage of legal pot in Colorado and Washington State. Now, this is serious.
Yes.
Right? 2 states
absolutely.
now have said recreational use of pot. Go
Very
for it,
serious.
baby, as long as the feds don't catch up with you, right?
Well, yeah, and of course the Obama administration, I thought, or the Justice Department, I thought, in a rather disappointing move, issued that letter that kind of just, really
Silly.
dampened things. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but I think it's good news. I think it's a good thing.
I don't think they're going to. I don't think the feds will follow through. I know they're going to say the right things, but I think they'll be kind of looking the other way. I mean, you start in Washington State or Colorado, chasing down people who are just, in their own home, enjoying a joint. Right.
Well, a lot of it was about bringing it into courthouses, and but that's just kind of common sense to me.
Don't do it.
Don't bring it into a federal courthouse.
I
don't
think that's probably a good move. Here's the question: I ask you both. So, if marijuana is now recreational use of it is legal in both of those states, right? That's going to mean a big demand for pot. Where's all that pot going to come from?
We got it, right? I mean,
I think the streets are flowing.
Yeah,
I
there's
think-
a
I don't
lot
know.
of pot.
There's already enough supply.
Yeah,
you
I think there's probably a question of how you get that supply, from legal sources. But then again, they're not addressing that question yet because it's still illegal to sell it, but you can possess it up to I think an ounce or more than an ounce or something.
And I've also seen some of the states that are doing the medical marijuana. They have sort of commissioned grow houses. I mean, there's in D.C. they have a large warehouse because pot's not that hard to grow inside. So I've heard.
That's true.
So I've heard. And so
it's not that hard to grow outside either.
Yeah, right.
So I've heard.
Right. So I mean, they'll probably they might have to invest in some of that and grow lamps and things like that. But you could do it inside.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to be able to get like a marijuana hot dog, in Washington State pretty soon.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Wow. And you know what? There's going to be a lot of, we talked about with Alan St. Pierre about this last week from Normal. There's going to be pot tourism too. People
I'm sure.
going to these states in order for the to take advantage of the new law. On another subject, there was a time when Supreme Court justices were seen and not heard. I mean, right? They didn't. They might ask a question at oral arguments, but otherwise you never heard from them. I mean, in their written briefs for or against a particular decision, that's when they expressed their views in writing, not now.
Intelligently.
Now, right. Now they're out there spouting off all the time. They're like freaking TV commentators, right? Some of them.
Yes.
Not all of them. But the worst is Antonin Scalia, who has long been known for... let's just put this, not being very open to gay rights. I mean, he's basically a real
I think you're putting that kindly.
So he's at Princeton this week, and he was asked about things that he had said at a student law school. He was asked about things that he had said earlier, equating bestiality and with homosexuality and all that kind of stuff. And here's what he said. Of course, I have strong feelings on this subject. And he says, quote, if we cannot have moral feelings against homosexuality, how can we have moral feelings against murder? So he in one sentence, puts homosexuality and murder together. They're the same thing, so we can have equally strong feelings against both, as if they're the same thing.
Yeah,
look,
that's ridiculous. It's the kind of demagoguery we've seen from these nut jobs on the right. Like I feel I don't want to say Rick Santorum, but it feels very kind of Rick Santorum-esque.
Yeah, right.
Without putting words in his mouth, and the kind of stuff you hear from the Tea Party. That's just this like slippery slope, reduction to the absurd, which I think is what the person who questioned the justice asked kind of responded that he was engaging in,
But I think it's a legitimate question the guy asked. I mean, how can you equate these two? I mean, even the Supreme Court. Now, he was on the losing side of the opinion, but the Supreme Court in that Texas case said, whatever two people of the same sex do behind closed bedroom doors, consenting adults, is fine. You cannot outlaw that kind of activity. But here's where I think that gets relevant. The Supreme Court now has two cases in front of it. They agreed to take them last week, dealing with same-sex marriage.
Yes.
How can Scalia be on that court and be expected to weigh the evidence and rule based on the Constitution when he's such a homophobe?
Well, I think I don't think there's any question that any folks that study this stuff understand where Scalia is going to come down on any Supreme Court review of DOMA or the Defense of Marriage Act, which is really what this is about largely, so. I think, though, that his comments will kind of poison the well. It's back to what you initially said, Bill, which is that, in the past, Supreme Court justices are seen and not heard, and we, think of them as this deliberative body above the body politic, aside from politics.
That's what they're supposed to be.
That's what they're supposed to be. It's why they're appointed for life. But the Supreme Court has become one of the political centers of American political life, and I don't know that most Americans realize that Republicans have spent 30 years, God knows how much money, with organizations like the Federalist Society to influence the court, to influence the way the court behaves. And, we've seen the Roberts Court is an incredibly political court. I mean, look at Citizens United and just the absurdity of that decision. Yeah,
they've really turned it into a political hot potato.
Yeah,
right?
now
a right-wing political hot potato, and nobody leading the pack more than Scalia. But unfortunately, I know we have to take a break here, but the justices, there's nothing to force them to step down. So they make their own decision. And when Scalia wouldn't step down on the Dick Cheney case, right, after even going duck hunting with Dick Cheney in the same duck blind, he's not going to personally make the decision to step down on these same-sex marriages. But he really should. I wish there was some way to force him to.
I do as well, but I don't know that he's going to help his case much, because this court, Roberts, is subject, as we know, to public opinion and concern over the public opinion of the court. So
John Roberts
Scalia may have hurt himself in his position.
He may surprise us again. Eric Burns with Bullfight Strategies. When we come back, Eric, if you were advising John Boehner on the fiscal cliff negotiations, just as a consultant to a client, I want to know what you might tell him about the way he's handling things right now. When we come back here on the Full Court Press, and your call's welcome too.
This is the Bill Press Show. This is the Full Court Press, the Bill Press Show, live on your radio and on Current TV.
All right, 25 minutes after the hour, here we are on the Full Court Press on Wednesday, December 12th. President Jim Hoffa from the Teamsters joining us from Michigan in the next segment. Eric Burns is in studio as a friend of Bill this hour. Good to have you back, Eric. From Bullfight to Strategies, it's bullfightstrategies.com, and you can find out all the other good stuff that Eric and Carl Frisch are up to. Peter, what's going on?
We were just talking about the legalizing of drugs. We got a new sort of ally. in the war
Marijuana,
on
not
drugs.
all drugs.
Marijuana. Jimmy Carter came out and said he's okay with legalizing marijuana. He was on CNN and he was asked about it. He says, quote, "I'm in favor of it. I think it's okay."
You know why? Because you get an appetite for peanuts.
That's what happens.
That's right. You
That's
just
the first thing I reach for.
get the munchies.
Get the munchies
But like,
for
if Jimmy
peanuts.
Carter says it's okay, how can it not be okay?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Jimmy Carter. But then that reminds me of the old story of Willie Nelson smoking a joint on the roof of the White House when he was president. You remember that story?
No.
maybe
Jimmy
Jimmy
Carter?
Carter's this giant.
No, not
closet
Jimmy
of pot.
Carter, the Willie Nelson.
No, but Willie, when Jimmy Carter was
I
president,
heard that growing up,
Yeah,
but
Willie
I grew
was-
up
I've
in,
heard that.
I grew up in Republican land, so it might have just been one of
smoking a
those.
joint on the roof of the White House.
Makes you wonder if maybe the president was up there.
I hope that's true.
And by the way, Willie Nelson tells that story. Whether or not that's true, he might be stoned every time he tells it. But on that note about the war on drugs, our interview that we did yesterday with Neil Franklin from the Law Enforcement Against Prohibition is up on current.com/BillPress. Go watch that video. It's fantastic. He's a 34-year-old veteran of the Baltimore Police Force, and he says legalize all drugs. And it's great.
And I have to tell you, Patty Reagan told me that she smoked pot in the White House.
Really?
She told me that when I interviewed her when her father was president. So, you know.
Those Reagans, man, they always surprise you. They just keep surprising us. Don't
There
they?
you go. All right, I want to come back to my question.
Yes,
So
yes.
you do public relations, right? You're great at it. What do you tell John Boehner about the negotiations on the fiscal cliff?
Well, look, I would. It's very simple to me. I mean, the public spoke with this election. The Republicans lost. And that means that they need to be the ones to come to the table, and they need to demonstrate that they can compromise. I don't think that there's any question that this president has attempted over and over and over again to come to the table, to compromise, cut $1.6 trillion, out of the budget and budget cuts when the Republicans held these guys up with the debt ceiling debate this last year in 2011. And for Boehner, where I feel he's losing credibility, one is by being just beaten up by Eric Cantor, but two, by refusing to put out specifics and saying to the President of the United States, no, you need to put up your spending cuts. No, you need to do it. It's like, no, he needs to show some leadership.
And on the tax cuts for the 2%, he ought to go for it,
He
right?
absolutely should go for it, without question. Without question.
Yeah, I think you're right. That was the Romney plan. The American people have spoken. They didn't want the Romney plan. They want the Obama plan. Republicans lost.
His respect would go through the roof. His popularity would go through the roof. He would be seen as a serious person.
All right, President Jim Hoffa joins us next.
This is the Bill Press Show. Heard around the country and seen on Current TV, this is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, it's 33 minutes after the hour now here on this Wednesday, December 12th. This is the Full Court Press. We're coming to you live from our nation's capital and brought to you today by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, the good men and women of the Teamsters Union under President Jim Hoffa. We all live better because of their good work building America. You can find out more about their good work at their website, www.teamster.org. And if you thought the war on working families was over, think again. It started in Wisconsin, it moved on to Ohio, and now the battleground has shifted to Michigan, where Governor Rick Snyder didn't hesitate right away signing that right-to-work legislation last night, even though before he had promised labor leaders he didn't like it. He didn't want to see it happen in Michigan, on the ground in Michigan. One of our great labor leaders in this country, President Jim Hoffa from the Teamsters. Hey, Jim, good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
So what can we do to turn this around, and what is the determination? I would imagine that you and other leaders of the labor movement in this country are not just going to accept this and walk away, right?
No, this is a battle that goes on and on and on. This has been going on since the Tea Party took over a number of state houses in 2010. We've seen it in Ohio, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan. There's a battle in New Hampshire for right to work, Missouri constantly. This is basically the far right wing trying to basically fight back. And, you know, the defeat of Mitt Romney, I think, just really fired them up because they were convinced they were going to win. So what we're having here is retaliation. But let me just tell you about what happened yesterday. We must have had 25,000 union people there. We had great demonstrations to show our outrage with what the Governor Snyder has done. He had a lame duck group of legislators vote on this. He wouldn't even wait or have the legitimate new people coming in. So the lame ducks, which were more his way, because we did win a number of seats in the House, voted on this. No vote of the people, no debate, didn't let labor come in and talk about it.
Right.
And they did this kind of in the dark of night, and then all of a sudden, within 5 days, we have right to work in Michigan. No vote, no debate, nothing. It's an outrage, and we're taking it to court. We're going to get on the ballot, and we're going to fight this all the way. But, you know, let's face it, this is more of the same thing. This is the far right wing. This is not about voters' rights. This is their commitment to knowing that, number one, you know, who really is the power in Michigan? You know, it's labor. And how do you weaken the Democratic Party in Michigan? You weaken labor. And the same thing in Ohio. I would dare to say, and I think it's very clear, that Barack Obama would not have won Michigan without labor, and he wouldn't have won Ohio without labor.
No, you're absolutely right. And the president said this the other day, a couple of things about it. First of all, this is all political. This is political payback, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is a payback. They are so angry. I mean, they can't believe that they lost Michigan by 9. You heard those stories about Dick Morris and Karl Rove thinking they were going to win.
Sure.
You know, even Mitt Romney didn't even have a concession speech written up. They were so convinced they were going to win. And by the way, I saw in the news last night that Sheldon Adelson, the guy with the casinos in Las Vegas, he's starting all over again. He says, I'll spend $100 million against labor because they realize, and, you know, these guys all talk together, the Karl Roves, the Norquist.
And the Koch brothers.
The Koch brothers. These people all talk to each other, and they figure out, how are we going to take over, and what the hell went wrong? They were so convinced that they had the money that they could win this race. And when they didn't win, they've been thinking, oh, now we have to go after labor because they're the problem. That's why we lost Ohio. That's why we lost Michigan.
I want to make sure, President Hoffa, that our listeners and our viewers understand exactly for working families what right-to-work legislation means. Because, you know, they do this all the time. They give these fancy, positive-sounding words, right, or phrases on something like right-to-work. How can you be against it, right? But tell us exactly what it means.
Well, we call it right to work for less. That's what the president called it. That's what we call it. And what it has, everywhere they do it, let's look at the South. The South, and you compare Michigan, which is, until this recent event, it's almost a $10,000 difference between Mississippi or Oklahoma in what people make there. Right to work for less really basically makes it you can have a free rider. In other words, if there's a union shop, somebody can opt out and not pay anything, but enjoy all the benefits the union brings, the good wages, the grievance procedure. If they get into trouble, get fired, the union has to represent them for free. I mean, you know, it's so wrong. And basically it creates free riders. And that's what's when, everybody knows that eventually that will erode the power of unions if we have nobody in the union. And, human nature is going to be, well, I'll just ride along here. I'll take everything for free and take all the benefits and pay nothing. So what we've got to do is to have, and it's worked tremendously well for 70 years in Michigan. 70 years, going back to the sit-down strikes. And all of a sudden, this happens. This is an outrage, but that's what they call right to work for less is. And they've tried it in Oklahoma. They keep on talking about Oklahoma. There was a story yesterday on NPR that says they're down 30% or 40% from what they did 10 years ago with regard to new companies coming there. Remember, Oklahoma, it was about 12 years ago. They said, Oklahoma will bloom. There'll be flowers everywhere. All we have to do is pass right to work for less.
Yeah.
And it's been a disaster for Oklahoma. And all it does is breed, jobs, people working for cash and minimum wage.
Well, that's exactly what Rick Snyder, of course, said yesterday. Eric Burns had a question.
Well, I was just going to say, look, being Mr. Hoffa, being from Texas and seeing, how much incredible wealth is being generated in the state of Texas from oil revenues and other things, and minimum wage jobs being created. It's a right to work state. Middle class being squeezed. As we continue to see these trends of the Republicans and the Sheldon Adelsons and the Koch brothers just pouring more and more money to really decimate the middle class, do you think there's ultimately going to be a backlash, and that people are are going to have enough of this and literally rise up, and we're going to see actually growth? For unions across the country, maybe not this year, but 5 years from now, or are you already seeing that?
Well, we were seeing it in Michigan. Michigan's coming back. I was interviewed by some woman from CNN yesterday, and she said, Michigan's hemorrhaging jobs. I was like shocked.
Where is she? Where's she been? Right?
I'm sitting here going like, I couldn't believe I heard this on this headset. And she said, Michigan's hemorrhaging jobs. Isn't this going to help? I said, where are you at? I said, Michigan is the comeback state. We're the one that's doing better. Our unemployment is lower than the national average. We're hiring people in the auto industry. Manufacturing is coming back. I know in the Teamsters, we're getting more employees.
Yeah.
But there's no way about it. This is a setback, and this is basically a continuation of this right-wing conspiracy, the Tea Party, and this is, the Karl Roves, the Grover Norquist, the Sheldon Adelsons, and the Koch brothers. This is the same thing. This just didn't happen. This isn't the will of the people of Michigan. And this is something that we see. Right now we're fighting this in New Hampshire. We're fighting it in Missouri and other states. We've got the upper hand there because we have Democratic governors. But when they basically get a Republican governor and a Republican House and Republican Senate, it's the first thing they did. And that's what they did in Indiana.
Right. That's right.
And they jammed it through, and the same thing happened here. Remember, in Indiana, we got to get it done before the Super Bowl.
Right.
I think they did it in 4 days. Mm-hmm. This is basically the same thing.
I wanted to ask you whether we have spent in the labor movement a lot of time, and it's important time and resources on U.S. Senate races and congressional races and for the White House. Do you think maybe now we have to start spending more time looking at state legislative races and governor's races? Jim?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, because you realize that's where they can do the damage.
Yep.
Everybody knows. We think the real ones that get all the publicity are the Senate races and the House races, but you realize the power of a governor who can do the damage that Rick Snyder is doing here. And when they get the stars aligned with the Republican House and Republican Senate.
Yep.
In Michigan, we had the House for years, and we finally lost the House in the right-wing landslide of 2010. So for the first time, they had the House, the Senate, and this is what we get. So you're right. We have to pay more attention to state houses, the state Senate, and governors are extremely important. And, we all get involved with, all these, the sexiness of, Washington, D.C., but boy, it's really out there where they can make progress against us.
Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen it again, Wisconsin, Ohio, and New Hampshire, and now Now Michigan, well, we know we're going to fight back. We're part of the battle any way we can, whether it's to recall Snyder or to have a referendum and overturn the right to work legislation. Whatever it is, Jim, you show the way. We'll be there with you, fighting all the ways.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Bye-bye.
Jim Hoffa, president of the Teamsters, on the ground in Michigan. The other thing is, Michigan is a state, as Jim sort of indicated, that labor has built.
Absolutely. Well, the auto industry.
Think where Michigan would be without the UAW. Right?
Absolutely.
You identify the two of them, and then somehow this gang of these gangsters got in charge of the state legislature.
Ultimately, look, you know what, Bill? This is not good business for American business in the long term.
No.
And we are going to find that out. If we don't find it, if you don't realize it now, we're going to find it out in 5 years or 10 years.
It's not good business for Michigan either.
No.
Hey, your call's welcome on this at 866-55-PRESS. It is the big story of the day here on the Full Court Press. Eric Burns in studios, a friend of Bill.
This is the Full Court Press, the Bill Press Show, live on your radio and on Current TV. This is the Bill Press Show, live on your radio and Current TV.
13 minutes before the top of the hour here, the Full Court Press. Eric Burns in studio with a friend of Bill, Peter Ogburn here, keeping in touch with you via Twitter and Facebook. Dan, I just wanted to play for our audience one more time. Fox News has the answer yesterday. Of course, Fox News is making this now. The labor thugs are beating up everybody in Michigan. There were a couple of guys in the protest who got out of line yesterday. Okay, so that happens, right? But it was not a bloody, violent protest out there. President Hoffa said they had 25,000 people there, and they were just standing up for their rights. But Fox News had the answer yesterday. If you don't like what this new law is in Michigan, here's Martha McCallum and Greg Jarrett on Fox News. Their answer.
One woman in a soundbite we had earlier said, I don't want to work next to somebody who doesn't have to pay what I have to pay. So that's part of the outrage here.
If she doesn't like that, she can go get a job elsewhere, I suppose.
Oh, yeah. She doesn't like that, just move somewhere. Move to New York State or something. Move to California. That's easy.
If you don't love it, leave it. I mean, that's kind of their attitude.
Insane. Yeah.
Now, I've got a question for you, Bill. Are those two anchors, are they part of a union, a broadcasters union?
It's an interesting question, Eric.
At Fox News, I doubt it.
Okay, I'm just curious. I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. Let's say a quick hello to Joey out in Chicago. Joey, what do you got? Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning, guys. I got to tell you, I think this is good for us.
Why?
think the Republican Party is childlike in the way they go about their business. They do everything in secret and everything. You know, what they did is they have awoken a sleeping giant. I really mean it. And I don't think labor is going to stand for this, and I guarantee you that it's going to turn around and bite them in the ass, Bill. I guarantee you this.
Hey, Joey, I hope you're right. And, Eric, it could very well. I mean, look what happened. Look, we've had a mixed record here. You gotta admit, we did not win the recall in Wisconsin. Big disappointment. Mm-hmm. We did win the referendum in Ohio.
Yes.
So it's not automatic if you take this to the people you win, but it's certainly, I think if you take it to the people with a good campaign and all the right resources and the right message, you can win. So, again, you're a political strategist. You've run a lot of campaigns. If you're advising organized labor here in Michigan, you certainly don't just roll over and give up.
No.
What do you do? Try to get it on the ballot to repeal it?
I think you've got to get it on the ballot to repeal it. I think when you get a new legislature in, depending on how much more friendly it is.
Well, wait, you got to make sure it's more friendly, right? I mean,
well, of course. I mean, but Jim mentioned that they had a lame duck session that passed this.
I got it. Yeah.
I don't know how many more Democratic seats they have.
Not enough to take over.
But they've got to start working things legislatively. And I'll tell you more broadly, I think labor needs to get get more engaged in impacting and being a part of the news coverage that defines the stuff. The clip that you mentioned from Fox News is the typical stuff that we see from the cable networks. Labor just isn't represented. When you have a business person talking about any issue, labor represents the common working man, whether you're a member of a union or not. That is what labor represents. It's what it's meant for this country for 100 years. And I think they need to get more engaged in the media debate
and out there as part of the media. Peter, any comments on Facebook and Twitter before we go back to the phones?
We're tweeting at BP Show. Make sure you check us out there. Lots of reaction to our interview with Jim Hoffa just now. Naomi says, Jim Hoffa is so totally right. We must pay attention and vote in state elections, not just federal elections every 4 years, which is one of the points he made when we just had him on. And Eliza says Fox's local camera people are union workers. So at least we know some of the employees that work for Fox are union. So,
yeah. But just California, for example, this year, California, there was this gridlock in California. It was very, very similar to what's happening here in Washington, D.C. Republicans control the legislature and would not compromise on anything with Governor Brown to try to get new revenue and new spending cuts as well. So the voters this year not only endorsed an initiative on November 6th, which would raise taxes, some taxes, in order to get some new revenue. They approved that, but they also cleaned house, threw the Republicans out of the legislature and gave the Democrats a veto-proof majority, or filibuster-proof majority, whatever, the two-thirds majority that they need in the legislature to get things done. So when you see the people who are really the obstacles to any progress, like in Michigan, you got to go in and clean house. Well, voters of California saw that. You couldn't get anything done with those Republicans in charge.
There's a historical precedent for this. If you go back and you look at the late 1800s and the early 1900s, where we had the Rockefellers and we had the Vanderbilts and the Carnegies fighting and developing an enormous amount of wealth, what ultimately happened to the common worker? Well, I mean, they were used and abused and treated very, very poorly, and that is what really gave rise to the modern labor movement. And we are almost seeing kind of the beginning of those patterns again, where we have Republicans that are unabashedly, unapologetically, viciously ripping apart the middle class. These guys would have my mom, when she goes on Social Security, eating cat food if they could. And I think that there's going to ultimately be a backlash to that long term.
Yeah, you said it earlier. John Boehner acts as if there was no election, right? If the American people haven't spoken. So do these Republican governors. Yeah. And Jim Hoffa is probably right. They're so disappointed that they lost with Romney. Now this is their payback, and they're just going to do whatever they can at the local level, at the state level, to try to push that extreme right-wing agenda. Well, Eric, we didn't solve all the problems of the world in the last hour, but we solved a lot of them. We got a lot done. I feel better after this last hour.
It was a good hour, and Rush is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so who can complain?
Eric Burns, nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Guys.
I'll tell you what the president's up to next.
This is the Bill Press Show.